Tonight is part 24 of Q's Q&A on coronavirus and the LGBTQ community, August 25th. This special segment is designed to be unique in America to answer your questions about coronavirus for the LGBTQ community during this pandemic. Every Tuesday, we have an American pioneer in HIV and AIDS medical treatment. With us is Dr. Howard Grossman, specialist in internal medicine with an emphasis on HIV. He was the executive director of the American Academy of HIV Medicine. He has become nationally recognized as an educator on HIV issues and as an advocate for LGBTQ civil rights and the rights of our community.
And of course, he has become our medical expert during pandemic for Queer News tonight. Welcome, Dr. Grossman. We're glad you're here. Before we get into viewer questions, as we start every single episode, 25, my goodness, another big week. There's several big stories in the news this week for COVID. Big week for science and the medical community. And before we discuss any of the viewer questions, I want to give you the opportunity to springboard and dive right in wherever you want to tell us about what's on your mind this week.
Well, first, hi, Misty.
Hi.
Happy anniversary.
You're at the table today.
Yeah. Happy anniversary.
Right.
Or unhappy anniversary. First, Al, I would really like to salute the piece that you just did, the apology, that very touching piece. And, you know, I think in this time of COVID, supporting gay business is very important, but I think also reassessing our use of social media. Bullying.
Dr. Grossman, turn it on.
It's on. It's on.
Turn the switch on.
It's on. It's been on. Sorry, we're having microphone problems. In any case, I think it's time to reassess our use of social media because it's so easy to pick up, open your computer and write something really nasty.
Mm-hmm.
People have been talking about this for ages, and it hurts small businesses, not just LGBT businesses. But those reviews, people go to businesses based on those reviews. And so I really would encourage people to think twice, having been on the receiving end of some really nasty stuff as a medical provider for people who had true psychological problems. You really can destroy a business by putting that. And I would also encourage
or
people,
provide misinformation.
If you've had a good experience, to actually write a very quick note on social media to praise that business, because people do pick the businesses by what you write, and the more good reviews a person gets, the better. Certainly if a place is terrible, you want people to know it, but I would do it in a way that is not destructive but supportive, and that's a difficult balance to strike. So thank you. I think that's a really important health issue for our community and for all communities, especially in this time.
Great.
Go ahead and you've got some great questions.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump right into viewer questions tonight.
Sure. This question confuses me a tiny bit, so I might need your clarification. But Trump just approved COVID-19 plasma treatment. What is your advice, and what does this even look like? Like, what would happen with this?
Well, Trump didn't approve this. Trump forced the FDA to approve this, which is exactly the kind of politicization of the FDA that every medical expert in the world has been worried about. Okay, so let's be very clear about the plasma treatment. Now, I gave plasma when I had antibodies.
So did I.
And I think it's important. And it's very important that it be studied because you're giving antibodies to people who are sick. At least that was the way we were told. Now, the problem is the way this is rolled out. This was rolled out saying that this was an important treatment that had been scientifically proven, and the White House doubled down on that again today. In fact, this is a treatment that has not been proven. Now Alex Azar, the Secretary of HHS, who has been a mouthpiece for pharmaceutical companies and other players for years, said that it decreased mortality by 35%. Now, the truth of the matter is that this was a Mayo Clinic study, 70,000 people that they gathered information on, and first of all, both groups got plasma. One group got high antibody titer plasma, one group got low antibody titer plasma. Now, the way they presented it, you would think one got plasma, one got nothing. That's not what happened. And they looked at the two groups, and the difference was that that 3 people in the high antibody titer plasma
Recovered?
did better, and 3 out of 100, I'm sorry, 3 out of 100 did better, and 5 out of 100 in the low antibody titer plasma. So that was a 35% difference, okay? But 3 out of 100 versus 5 out of 100, and in fact, overall, there really was no difference between low antibody and high antibody. And that's number one. Number two is that these were people who didn't need to go on respirators, so these were people who weren't as sick. And we've all thought that the plasma was being given to the sickest patients. And the third thing is that it turns out that to have any difference, you have to really give this stuff very early before people develop their own antibodies. So remember, those first 2 or 3 weeks, there's no sense in getting antibody tests because they don't appear for about 2 to 3 weeks. And once a person develops their own antibodies, why do they need external antibodies? So you really have to give it very early, which is not generally when we'd be doing this. So there's so many complications with this. Scientists everywhere have been slamming it today and saying this was ridiculous. This is politicizing.
Why is he doing this then? Is it just
Election.
more misdirection?
False hope?
Election.
Yeah.
It's the election, and he's looking for good. So he's had so much bad news this week between his son, being subpoenaed. His one of his good friends, Steve Bannon, being indicted. I mean, on and on and on. As far his sister, tapes released with his sister saying what a jerk he is. How much worse can you get? And he's looking for any piece of what good news he can get. I think it is despicable that the Health and Human Services and the FDA have been turned like this to give people false information. I understand that Sanjay Gupta on CNN confronted Alex Azar today, and he said that he was wrong in the way that he presented this.
Is there any, before we move on to our next question, is there any medical risk to the LGBT community in terms of having plasma or plasma treatment, or is there any risk?
You can always have a reaction to plasma.
Okay.
But I think for the most part, it's just that it's a therapy that needs to be further studied. We need to know the difference between people who get plasma and people who don't. Is there really a difference? Is there a mortality difference? Is it worth spending all this money on? And we just don't know the answers to those questions.
Let's move on. A viewer wrote in pandemic, do we need to be worried over? Oh wait, I should.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Kentucky Fried Chicken has announced this week that they're suspending their 50-year-old marketing campaign of finger-licking goods over concerns of pandemic. And so the writing question was, in pandemic, do we need to be worried over finger-licking good?
Well, I think licking other people's fingers might be something you want to avoid. But, Mom, we always go back to Mom, right? Mom always said, wash your hands before you eat. If you wash your hands before you eat and it's you touching the food, I don't see what difference it's going to make to lick your own fingers.
Yeah. So you think KFC's approach here was just because of a branding concern, not really a medical concern?
Yeah, no, totally.
Okay.
Totally. I'm not sure why they did it, because I think it's completely safe if you're eating the food. What
Especially finger
difference it's
food.
going to make if you touch with your fingers?
Right.
Remember, this is a respiratory virus. It's not one you get by ingesting things. It's not one you get by sex. It's respiratory virus. The whole thing with fingers is touching your eyes, touching your nose, picking your nose and sticking virus up your nose. I mean, that's how you get this.
I'm going to spend all evening trying to get that in my head.
There you go.
Dr. Grossman.
And remember, again, I'm going to say, we've talked about the masks. I see lots of people in my practice wearing masks that do not fit well over the nose. You can see my mask has this metal bar. Now, lots of inexpensive masks don't have that. And so what I've been recommending to people is that they just get a paper clip, open it up, and glue it to your mask. Or get a little piece of wire not from Home Depot, but from Lowe's, And the guy at Home Depot is a right-wing lunatic.
Oh, I gotcha.
But get a piece of wire and stick it into the mask so that you have something that you can shape to your nose. That's really important.
You know, I want to ask you, before we move on to our final question, which is the big question of the week in COVID, I want to come back to your mask questions. You, again, point out about the respiratory. There's been so much discussion this week about face shields. And so many people saying, like when you're flying, that face shields actually may provide better protection. And it intuitively doesn't make sense to me because there's so much opening at the bottom. But more and more people are saying that the actual, because it is respiratory in terms of expulsion or you expelling respiratory droplets, that the face shield is actually better than mask. What do you think about that?
No, it's face shield plus a mask. It's
Doing
better
both is the
than
best.
Injection.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
And what do you...
Because it protects the eyes. If your mask is loose, it's providing another barrier. On an airplane, you know, if you have the air pushing at you, it's blowing everything away from you anyway, but
That makes sense.
if you're worried about it, I'm not sure that it makes that much of a difference, but
A face shield
I saw
versus
lot
a
of people-
mask.
A face shield versus a mask? No,
Yeah.
mask is number one.
Definitely
The face
mask.
shield is on top of it.
Okay, we're seeing more and more acceptance of people being in businesses, for example, customers coming in, and it's being considered a face mask, but it's really the face shield.
Shouldn't be, because you can just expel it out the bottom.
Okay, all right, all right.
Another viewer asked, the first reinfection case was just reported in Hong Kong. Is this true? And what's next for you and all of us?
Well, from what I've read about it, it's a very interesting case. So this was a person who was infected, I believe, in March or earlier, and then more recently traveled to Europe from Hong Kong and came back and was sick again. And when they actually looked at the virus, it's genetically different by 24 nucleotides than his original virus. Apparently, they sequenced that virus as well. So, you know, it appears to be the first documented case of reinfection with a coronavirus in the same family. I think it's important, number one, that he picked this up in a different part of the world. And certainly travel restrictions are in place all over the place now. And the second thing is that, okay, we were expecting that this could happen because protection from all kinds of viruses is not 100%, but it's 1 out of probably 24 million people who've been infected. So look at the numbers. I mean, if this was a significant problem, you would be having a lot of reinfections. And we have 1 after, I mean, if this showed up in China in December, it's 1 after 9 months. So, you know, now how long immunity will last, that's something we've talked about over and over again. We don't know. You know, flu, you need to get vaccinated every year, and we'll use this moment to remind people, please, please get the flu vaccine. It's out there now. Get it now when people aren't getting colds so that you don't get a cold on top of it and think it's from the vaccine.
And not too early to get the flu shot?
No. You have your antibodies will last well into next year.
Okay.
But get it now so that there's no confusion if you get ill between the flu and the coronavirus. The symptoms look the same.
Okay, and I want to re-clarify what I heard you say, which is the most interesting thing that was about this story. First off, when I heard the reporting on this, I wondered if it was accurate first, and then I thought of you instantly because you're one of the first people that I heard of in South Florida to contract coronavirus, and then you had the antibodies, etc. The number at 24 million and now 1 or a couple of small number of cases, the numbers are just astronomical in terms of the incident number is so beyond small, it's just beyond small. But so many people, I'm concerned in the LGBT community will just run amok in the story of catapulting this story. What do you think about, as these numbers of coronavirus, we're reporting nearly 500,000 LGBT in the United States have COVID. 1.5 million LGBT around the world. More and more and more and more people are going to have COVID. They're going to have antibodies as they hopefully recover. What do you think about for them that have antibodies? Is there any effect of this study or this reporting news with somebody that has recovered from coronavirus? They should be following all the same protocols, shouldn't they, of somebody who hasn't?
Well, that's what we've been saying. I mean, there is some psychological, I think, relaxation when you know that you've already been infected, because we do know there is an immune response, and we know that at least for a few months, people seem to be okay. It's totally predictable that there would be cases. I mean, let's look at PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis that so many gay men are taking. It's not 100% effective. It's 99.9% effective. I mean, that's about as close as you can get. But there have been a few breakthrough cases, but a handful in the entire world for people who were actually taking the drug. So it wasn't unexpected when it happened, but it's like, again, would it stop you from doing it? I think the problem in our community is the amount of misinformation. We have a practice in Key West, and I go down there every other week. And I was down there a few weeks ago and brought a couple of friends with me who went off to a gay hotel for the
Island
day.
House.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention any names. And truthfully, the hotel tries to take precautions of making people wear masks when they're walking around, but the pool was like a gay men's soup. I mean, there must have been 40 or 50 people in the pool, packed together, no masks. My friends were wearing masks, and some guys from Atlanta said, "Oh, we don't have to worry. We've got herd immunity in Atlanta because we were all partying together." I mean, that is the stupidest thing I think I've heard in months. But if there are gay people out there who think that, they are putting everybody else at danger.
Yeah.
I mean, herd immunity means 70 to 80% of the entire population infected with the virus. We're nowhere near that, okay? And so that kind of attitude puts everybody in danger. And that, to me, is the problem. I think for people who've been infected, most will do okay. I still wear my mask, I still wear my mask everywhere I'm supposed to. Do I, inside of me, feel a little bit more relaxed than maybe you guys?
Sure.
Not you, Al, but Misty.
Yeah, I've not had
and
it.
who's never been infected? Yes.
Did you say I'm not having it?
No, I have not.
Oh,
I'm one of the few people I know that hasn't contracted
Yeah.
COVID-19.
Right, and so, you are going to be even more nervous up front.
Of course.
The other thing that they said in this study is that the guy had a more mild form of disease, and this is something that scientists have been hypothesizing about for the last couple of months, that if a person was to get reinfected, since they do have some residual immunity, that the case would be more mild, and that's what seemed to happen with this guy in Hong Kong. So I think that, there's plenty of reason, I think, to hope, but also be smart, to know that it can happen and to take those precautions. Plus, this is the social norm, wearing the masks. I saw a patient today who lives north of here in a county that makes a strong recommendation for masks, but they took out their mask mandate.
Right.
Okay? And he told me that until June, nobody up there was wearing masks, months and months after this whole thing started.
Yeah.
So, because I said, how did you get infected? He goes, well, nobody was wearing masks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've come to the end of the segment. Before we finish, Dr. Grossman, want to give you anything else that you want to bring up for the week? Or?
I would just caution people, there's a lot of misinformation coming out at the Republican convention about what Trump has done with coronavirus, about what's working, what's not working. I would just caution people, go to the doctors, go to the scientists, take everything you hear this week about coronavirus at that convention with a grain of salt, because they're not telling the real story.
Well, that's it. And that's why we're at part 25. I have a few friends of mine around the country that are betting me how many different parts of Q's Q&A on coronavirus in the LGBT community I'm wondering if we're going to hold you into your absolute retirement, because we may be doing this
Wow.
that long. But we certainly thank you for what you do. Every Tuesday night, we bring you viewer questions and the most important medical advice, the clarity of accurate information. You hear Dr. Grossman, it's one of the top things that I hear from him tonight in every subject related to COVID and our LGBTQ healthcare, is to pay attention where you're getting your information and learn from accurate information, not the gossip that you read online. Remember, our expert is Dr. Howard Grossman. He runs Midway Specialty Care Center right here in Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And as always, thank you, Dr. Grossman, for being with us tonight.
Thanks, Sal.